on there.
Union Lab.
Or as soon as I write the one,
They're going to exert.
right. So
Like
will
a
you
lot of them
sign,
are.
but will you just make sure that I'm logged off at the end? Okay. Do you know how to log off here? You have to end meeting.
End meeting.
You have to go to the full screen and then end.
I can, yeah, I know how to
Okay,
get,
so you can,
yeah.
okay, so you can log in at home.
Okay.
And Carrie needs to know that.
Yeah, let me text.
So it's.
I'm still getting a kick out of that. Just.
Sorry to throw that at you at the last minute. It's just, we just found out last night.
Yeah. Because I've been trying to reach him for a couple of days, and then he just got back to me and was like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And I said, well, can you please email everybody?
Yeah.
Let them know we need this to happen.
Okay, here's the Zoom up there. So it is https:// and then myunion.zoom.us/.
myunion.zoom.us.
That's a good question to ask, isn't it?
Where we go.
Thursday morning, tomorrow morning, or
Doesn't go to my account.
our required
That's mine.
business class is not listed as being over here.
It's okay, I can find out.
/US/my.
Literally wrote everything over here except for
There's a
7 o'clock.
a slash after my.
I just don't think it has a
That's
rubber stick.
Not even.
No, you're in the wrong spot. You just search for it. Yeah, copy that.
Put that in the browser.
They canceled it then.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's a whole day in the morning. I'm
That's
just
it.
Let's make sure it runs.
Yeah.
Now, do I need to text that to Carrie?
I texted him.
Does he have that?
He should, because he was in our class.
Right. However, should.
Concern is
Doesn't always
that
work.
under, in that we may not allow.
I will. I'll just.
That's, yeah, on its own, it's not gonna run with Union Lab.
Yeah, it's a password.
Thank you all for your patience while the experts figure this out.
Of which I am not one.
Great help.
Concerns.
https://
No, you're right.
on Union.
Concern this might not work either.
.us/my.
That's how,
Really?
Slash. How did I speak? Okay.
That's your call.
Stop it.
Oh, jeez.
Access denied. crazy on it.
That looks like it's on, no?
No.
How about looking at my laptop, would that be different?
I just didn't, we usually don't sign in as, we usually sign in as regular users here. That's generally what we do, so,
Instead of a gas?
instead, UNULab. UNULab has restrictions on it,
I
the
see.
user does. We don't let them do anything. Not as a guest, signing in our computers. All right,
All
you
right,
said, go
HTTPS,
ahead, Zoom.
Zoom dot, no, I'm sorry, my union
My
is
union
first,
dot.
my union is first, my union dot Zoom dot US slash my slash Allardyce D. D. All right,
Now it should go
I
in.
think it's,
Now it should automatically download.
and I sent it to Karen.
Okay. Things printed, things on my phone.
Can I help you?
No, I'm good, I
Okay.
just,
Do you want me to pass out anything?
no, these are just for me.
Okay.
Thank you. Just like, pull extra things up, because, yeah.
Name? Would you want to come in as?
Oh, I'm Liz, you can put my name in, sure.
Liz?
Has Carrie responded? No.
We have a student joining us from our site.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And he's a presenter, so that's why we're,
Yeah, trying to hurry up and get in.
no, I'm not trying to rush.
Join with audio. Audio is connected.
Start video.
So this flash drive has to get moved on.
Usually from here, I just go down to start video, and we can see if he's in or not. We should see a list of, well, we see
You are.
ourselves. Text Carrie.
Which one?
Sideways.
Yeah, that is kind of simple.
Not sure why that is.
Text Carrie bracket.
What do I say?
Hi Carrie, do you read me? Question mark.
Here's your message.
Fish angle. Fish eye.
Remember the old, what do you call them, those radios that we used to have in the car in the 60s?
CB.
What was it, just?
CB radio?
Yeah, CB radio. Do you read me?
Copy. Does anybody watch Stranger Things? The kids in that show have walkie-talkies,
Yeah.
and they're always like, over.
Yeah,
Do
over
you
and
read me? Over.
What's your handle?
Yeah.
So he does not,
Does
yes.
anybody have a tissue?
I do. At least I have something.
Shortest, something so. Care of my right nose. Thank you so much. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well,
So now I'm gonna set up like tables upstairs.
Tissue.
thank you.
Thank you. Mary's gonna run me over.
Can I, is there a,
When we're both done.
Right. They hope to come back together. And if Carrie doesn't come soon, just
guys need any assistance, if you
Can
can't get a hold of Mary or somebody, you
Is
can always
it
call
the-
us at 1137. Okay.
Which, if I need to log onto the Wi-Fi, what's the, which,
Phone?
which?
Or,
yeah.
try UIU Public. You see that one? UIU Public.
Okay.
And the password's 12345678990. And everybody can use that.
5, 6, 7,
Good to know, thank you.
There's also UIU Guest available if you wanted to use that one.
And what's that?
12345678990, just like I
Same
have it
thing.
on the board.
Same.
There.
Oh, there it is.
Thank you, Bill.
Hopefully they will join here shortly. Do I have the same
Okay,
problem was here?
no, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull up
I'm going to check on some other
a
people.
couple of things.
Thank you.
Because I,
And I guess just go with a one-woman show if Carrie doesn't come.
Never heard back from you.
No.
no.
We're on a group text and we
Oh.
haven't,
Haven't heard.
No.
Okay.
not this morning, we heard last night.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, actually, he didn't respond to my text when you did.
Yeah, he hasn't responded to me either, and I texted him a little while ago.
So.
No, it's all right. I will,
She's an experienced performer.
wing it. No problem. So we can, yeah, we're fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
Have a
We're
good
all
session.
friends here. I have this weird, if you look on the screen, there's this weird, like.
It's your
thing.
aura. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, folks. Sorry for the frustration getting the technical things set up. We heard last night from one of the presenters, Gary, that he had an issue apparently with work and was not able to come. So we're trying to get him patched in. Hopefully he will appear. But as I mentioned, is an experienced performer, so she'll do a great job, even though she was expecting to have someone to collaborate with
Yeah.
this morning. So the intention is that performance poets combine their voices and unique styles of spinning words to show how words can be embodied to create space for empathy and social change. And this is the session, Social Injustice and Poetic Possibility, the Power of Spoken Word. I'm going to just read a few sentences to introduce Liz to you. Liz DeBetta is from cohort 23. She holds an MA in English from the City University of New York, the College of Staten Island, a BA in Theater and Speech from Wagner College, and uses her lived experience as an adoptee to inform her research on adoption trauma through the lenses of feminist theory and reproductive justice. She is a lecturer of English at Utah Valley University and the writing and performance mentor for Act, Risk, No More, a nonprofit theater group whose mission is to write and perform poetry and prose poetry to create socially conscious theater that tells true stories. So, welcome to the session. Liz, take it away.
Thank you, Carol. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. So yeah, hopefully Kerry will get on with us and we'll be able to do the thing that we planned, but if not, it's okay. So in terms of my experience with poetry and spoken word, so I started writing poetry when I was 14 years old because I was really, really depressed and had lots of feelings and didn't know what to do with them. And I had a really smart and insightful teacher and coach who said to me, maybe you should consider writing poetry, which at the time I thought was the dumbest thing in the world, because I was 14 and I knew everything. And then he shared a poem that he had written with me, and it was a paradigm shift. The poem was called Blue Fire, and it was a poem that he had written for his college girlfriend, who loved the ballet more than anything else. And he had taken her to the ballet on a date, and he spent more time watching her watch the ballet than he did watching the ballet, and he wrote this poem. And I thought, well, if this man can write this kind, can write poetry and express himself in this way, maybe it's not so dumb. And so poetry became an outlet for me, for starting at a very young age. It became a safe place for me to pour out all the things that I couldn't express any other way, the things I couldn't actually say in real time to anyone. And over the years, that expression has taken many forms. In the early 2000s, I lived in Seattle for a couple of years, and I got involved in the slam poetry scene for the time that I lived there, because it was a way for me to make friends and meet people and to continue to express myself. And that was probably the first time that I started sharing poetry publicly, feeling brave enough to do that. Because for a long time it was like a secret. It was like my secret thing that I did, and it was too embarrassing and too vulnerable, really. And now I work with a group, as Carol said, called Act Risk No More, and they're a group of teens and college students who either are or have been at risk in some way throughout the course of their youth, and they join the group to be able to use poetry and spoken word as a form of expression and healing. And so there's lots of research that supports the idea that when we express our writing, our feelings in writing and poetry, when we express difficult things, we're giving those feelings a container, and then we're able to heal because we're creating a narrative that makes sense to us, and we can rewrite our stories. Melissa Febos is a writer who just not too long ago had a really great article in Poets and Writers, where she talks about writing about trauma as a subversive act. And I really like this idea of using our pain and our trauma, and many of us carry things for most of our lives, as a way of being subversive, right? But also in that act of subversiveness, we're creating space for empathy and social change, because in terms of spoken word, it's a really kind of public poetry. It's sort of a call to action at times. It can inspire people to think differently. And for me, a lot of the themes that I write about, actually, I don't think that anything I'm going to share with you today is actually adoption-centered. So that's, I don't always write about adoption, but that's where my poetry started, was writing about the trauma of being adopted. So I'm going to start with a piece that I wrote this summer when I had the opportunity to support a poetry slam at the Salt Lake City Pride Festival. And I hadn't done a spoken word slam in like 20 years. And I had so much fun, and it inspired me to write some more pieces. So this is called Slut is a Social Construct. Slut is a social construct made up to keep women from fully expressing themselves, a weapon used to demean, diminish, discount, and discard, a war waged by a single word wielded purposefully and often, served like a side dish of shame at every meal in the house I grew up in. Don't be a slut. It's what my Catholic grandmother from Brooklyn told me, so I would keep my legs closed, so I would be afraid, so I would never learn to ask questions. Only sluts dress like that. It's what my Catholic mother from Brooklyn told me the first time my skirt was too short. The next time I wanted to wear that red dress, every time my clothes were too tight. She's such a slut. It's what my brother said to his best friend about Stacy, the only other girl who lived in the neighborhood. She's such a slut. It's what my grandmother said about Madonna when she was on the cover of TV Guide. She's such a slut. It's what my father said about the woman in his office who had too many boyfriends. Slut is a social construct made up to keep women submissive,
a weapon used to silence, subjugate, suppress, and subsume, a war waged by a single word wielded purposefully and often, swallowed whole every Sunday with a communion wafer. Slut, the opposite of the Virgin Mary, the opposite of right, the opposite of good, the opposite of pure. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. Blessed art thou for not being a slut. Blessed art thou for not spreading your legs, for not dressing inappropriately, for not ever having sex, for obeying, for acquiescing, for remaining untouched, pure and chaste, white like my communion dress, white like my wedding gown, white like my knuckles clenched in fear the first time. Slut. It's what I felt the first time his fingers found my skin, tracing telltale tales of transgression. Being a slut is a sin. It's a sin to like sex, to think about sex, to have sex, to be sexual. It's a sin to believe in a religion that is a social construct. I don't want to believe in a faith that tells me my body is a sin. Why shouldn't I be a slut if it means I'm allowed to own myself? I want to woman spread with all the confidence that has been sucked out of me by the idea that to take up space, to feel big, to be a slut, is to be a slut. I say bullshit. Slut is a social construct made up to disempower women, a weapon used to oppress, obscure, objectify, and obliterate, a war waged by a single word wielded purposefully and often. It's time to spit it out. Let's see, where should I go next? So another piece that I was inspired to write this past summer it's because while I was at the Salt Lake City Pride Festival. Thinking about being an ally and sort of because so much of the type of spoken word that feels important is aimed at creating space for change and getting, thinking about my own positionality and how I can use my own experiences to elevate other people. This kind of came out of me observing and thinking about my own allyship. On the subject of pride, I am walking around among folks in various states of undress, unabashedly unashamed, among a rainbow of flavors and colors of those who give absolutely zero fucks. Loving loud, loving proud, as they deserve, at least for today, for this weekend, maybe this month, if they're lucky. Stonewall happened 50 years ago in the city that never sleeps, the city that rocked me to sleep, the city I still call home even from 3,000 miles away. Stonewall means resistance. It's queens and queers saying no to the man, no to brutality, no to the insistence of fists that want to beat the beauty out of them, fists that want to beat the humanity out of just another one of God and Gaia's children, fists fueled by fear. Stonewall is the place where I met my first serious boyfriend. We were the only two straight people in the gayest bar in New York City. We were there with our gay best friends, allies against their alienation from the rest of the world that stonewalled them, from their families, forcing them to form families of friends, walling them in stony silence instead of wrapping them in relief, wrapping them in acceptance, accepting the sameness of souls born to love free from fear, like I can. But the ghosts of those fists remain, sliding icy fingers around the throats of too many people I love. A reminder that I have so many fucks left to give, I can't afford not to. All right, moving on. Sometimes I like to write about stuff that's going on in the world. And you'll probably figure out where this one came from. She was warned not to speak too loudly or too softly or at all. She was given an explanation that her words were unimportant, her thoughts incoherent, and her mind inconsequential. Nevertheless, she persisted so that her sisters might know the truth, her daughters might not be afraid, and her mother might know she paid attention. She was warned not to try too hard or to be too aggressive or to sit down and wait her turn. She was given an explanation that her efforts were not as important. She needed to be seen as feminine, and her turn would always be next to last. Nevertheless, she persisted so that she might find her own strength. She might define her own image so that she might stand on her own. She was warned that she wasn't enough. She was given an explanation that her place was in the home. Nevertheless, she persisted so that she could find self-worth. She was warned that her clothes were too tight. She was given an explanation that it would be her fault. She asked for it by displaying the shape of her womanness. Nevertheless, she persisted so that her body might be just that. She was warned she wasn't qualified. She was given an explanation that's just the way it is. Nevertheless, she persisted so that submission is not the status quo. She was warned that she had other, more important duties. She was given the explanation that motherhood is the most important job. Nevertheless, she persisted so that she might not be a prisoner to her womb. She was warned that she was too much, too independent, too outspoken, too sexy, not sexy enough. She was given an explanation that no man would want to marry her. Nevertheless, she persisted so that she might marry whom she chose. She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted. So I talked a little bit about the group that I work with. I don't know if I could find the right page. And so I find a lot of inspiration in the young people that I get to work with on a regular basis. And when I started working with my group Act Risk No More, I was really touched, and that sounds silly because it's deeper than that, but really humbled by the trust that these really fragile and beautiful young people put in me and my partner who started the group, to share their stories and their willingness to be vulnerable. And so I wrote this for them, and then we built a performance for the Salt Lake City Fringe Festival based on this piece. You beautiful messy ones, like willow trees, sometimes bent, but never broken. With strong roots and unquenchable souls, drenched in rivers of emotion, full of the tides of life and love and purpose and truth. Keep growing, keep stretching, keep believing there's more. You beautiful messy ones, full of angst and anticipation, full of secrets and truths, like the moon, sometimes dark, but never invisible. Find the light you were told you lost. Burn bright and hot. Your passion is your purpose. Your pain is your potential. Mine, beautiful messy ones, like willow trees, sometimes bent, but never broken. Let's see, where should I go from here? So this piece I just wrote, I like that I have all the technology, plus paper. I've covered all the bases. This piece I just wrote a couple of weeks ago. I was scrolling through some things on social media and saw something that just sparked something for me. And this actually is the concluding piece at the end of my dissertation. Performance piece that some of you got to hear the other day, and some of you I hope will get to hear tomorrow night. So it'll be familiar when you hear it again. It's called Epigraph. What are the words written on your body, like scars, crisscrossing the landscape of your skin, indelibly drawn in places you try desperately to hide. Words carved by the hands of those who have harmed you. Words that shame and silence you. Words that cut like razors. Words that define you. Words that undermine your beauty and your grace. Your face is a mask for the sins traced into your skin, scars that only you can see. The scars of words carved by mouths who want to profane you, make you unholy to the only one who truly matters, yourself. What are the words written on your body? Like epigraphs etched across the strength of your back, repeating lines and phrases, ancestors' ancient wisdom, words carved by those who made you, words to calm and protect you, words that heal the pinpricks of time, words that define you, words that remind you of your beauty and your grace. What are the words written on your body? The words that flow down the rivers of your arms when you encircle yourself, knowing that you are enough. Yeah, so let me finish up with, and I'll, to honor Carrie, we collaborated on a piece. So I'm gonna finish with that, and hopefully I can make sense of, oh wait, I got it in my Google Drive. Hi. Okay, so this piece started out as a piece that I wrote, I believe, after at the end of the semester when I took ethics and social justice with Dr. Samanga. And like frequently when I was doing my discussion posts each week, like at times I would get a little bored just writing the standard, mini essay paragraph form. So I would take the material and fashion poems out of it and use that as a response because I needed to have a little fun. So this started out as a response to a final discussion post for the term. And then I recently revised it and sent it to Kerry, who we were supposed to do this together. And I asked him to also add some of his own. So it was supposed to be a back and forth, but to honor him, I'll share the whole thing. And it's called Where Do We Go From Here? What's Going On? Where do we go from here when leadership is poisoned, bodies are destroyed due to blackness, queerness, transness, difference? I channel my Marvin Gaye and I ask what's going on when these babies are having babies. Yeah, what's crazy is that it's acceptable in society today. All I can do is pray that my daughter has the sense to learn statistics and not just become one when a boy comes after more than just her characteristics. Families are destroyed due to lack of proper documentation in their desperation to be part of an American dream that is dying. I'm sick of unofficial Purple Hearts being passed as young men die in different battles within the streets, but instead of letting them rest in peace, their name becomes a t-shirt and a Facebook status on a smartphone screen. RIP, Black Lives Matter, police brutality. In a society that should know better, in a world that insists on us versus them and undermines any kind of equality in favor of power for some who are soaked in centuries of singular focus. Yet the sad reality is that instead of fighting for change, society just happy to keep their nickels and dimes yet beg for a quarter, especially on tax time. Blinded by confusion between God and religion, religiously opposed to anything other than religiously opposing justice for all, we succumb to the headlines that sink us in sorrow. Another school riddled with bullets because toxic masculinity courses through the veins of too many boys, men who weren't shown a different way. Another woman objectified and defiled because too many boys believe they can just be boys instead of embracing vulnerability, finding love, finding truth, finding the strength to show emotion, forgetting the fear that says that tears aren't okay. Where have the children gone? For now I see little recreations of the parents' sins. Oh look, that baby smoking a blunt. Oh look, that baby girl is twerking her trunk. Toddlers getting drunk. Preteens getting pregnant, yet society's question isn't what happened, but where or when these young mothers get on the TV screen. Where have the children gone? Because all I see is the reenactors of the actions of irresponsible parents. It's time to tear through the soulless babble that sends messages of hate, misogyny, bigotry, and controls the choices we need access to. It's time to eat the elephant one small piece at a time. Time to teach our children a different way of being. A way that's not colorblind but inclusive, including the currency of complementary colors that complete the complexity of continuance. Of a nation that was founded on the principles of freedom from oppression, but ironically can't move past it, by countering the counterfeit counter-arguments that contradict our equal rights, by building communities that say no because silence equals complicity, by building bridges instead of burning them, one thought at a time, one constructive conversation at a time, one shift in perception at a time to activate, motivate, and create space for change.
Thank you. That was delightful, and we're going to take some time for questions. I just wanted to comment that when you and Carrie are ready, I definitely would consider sending that out as a collaborative poem for publication. And the journal that came to mind was Nimrod, because I know that they do take collaborative poems.
Right.
So, marvelous piece.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions, comments, reactions from anyone? Yes, go ahead.
One, I'm inspired to know that you can submit poems as a reply on the post. So, instead of just having to write the
Yeah. I mean, I didn't do it a lot, but occasionally I did. Or I would insert a poem in. Right.
And also, I love the transition from, the rhyme to, as it goes to this conversation and rhyme. To me, it's a great, weave and roller coaster to definitely, have your audience come in and be able to digest what you're talking about. It's really strong, and it definitely was definitely on topic too. I really loved it. So thanks for sharing.
The roller coaster is a great image for the pace and the movement of the poems that you shared. Lovely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey Liz, thanks so much. It was amazing. Along those very same lines, the body language, the actor in you really gives these poems another dimension, I think. Excellent on their own way, but you give us these little vignettes, like total monologues almost, and it's really very strong, very enjoyable.
Bring the words alive.
Yes. Liz, are they written someplace that we could read them up?
I'm going to put them all in a book. I'm actually working on that right now, just compiling it thematically, things that fit together to submit a couple chapbooks. That's been on my list of things to do, which Carol knows, so maybe soon. And I'm also redoing my website, so I will have a section on my website.
So the other question is, how was the post taken? How was the post received? The poetic post? The discussion post, how was that taken?
I think, because there's such a value in creativity in this program, I never got any sort of what is this? Because it spoke to whatever the question was. And, and I was careful with what I was responding to, if it was appropriate, right? And so sometimes it struck me as appropriate to use a different form to express the idea I needed to express. And I just sort of decided to try it.
Nice, thank you.
The at-risk group that you have in Utah, does it do this type of poetic reading, performance art, To what audience does it speak?
We actually, we perform a lot in the community at residential treatment centers for other at-risk youth. And we go into schools that serve at-risk youth primarily because we want the kids that are currently struggling to know that they're not alone and that there are other people who have come through those terrible experiences and are doing okay and have, you know, moved past them in many ways. In fact, to speak to like the power of transformation that happens when we do this kind of work, I had a student who joined the group a couple of years ago, and when he first came to a meeting, he hadn't left his apartment in 6 weeks because he had come out to his parents, who were like super duper strict Mormons, and they disowned him. They kicked him out of the house. They said, "You have to leave. You can't live. We don't want anything to do with you." So this 18-year-old kid had to figure out a place to live and like and to get a job and all these things. And he was really, really, really like just devastated and depressed, and like saw a little sign for our group and decided like this might be a place for me to meet some people and to find some connection. And so for the first few months, he told us his story, you know, in our group meetings, but he was hesitant to write about it. So when we did perform, he would perform pieces that had been written by some of the incarcerated youth that were in juvenile detention centers, which is how the group got started. My colleague went into juvenile detention centers to get the kids to write and share their stories, and then she took all those poems and spoken word pieces and published them anonymously so that those kids' voices could be heard. And so he would perform some of those previously written pieces, and then he started writing his own. And over the course of the year that he spent with us, his life completely changed because the empowerment that happened for him in not only being able to write down the different parts of his story and the progression of like, this is how I felt as a kid. He wrote this brilliant poem in limerick form about this terrible experience that he had had when he like trusted friends of his that he thought were his friends to tell them, you know, about his identity, and they beat him up and dragged him across an asphalt road in the middle of January. And it was a horrible experience, and yet he chose to put it in limerick form. And so the contrast of that was shockingly brilliant, and so that's one of the amazing things that he did. But his, you know, in being able to write and perform, you know, 3 or 4 different pieces that he had written about his experiences, by the end of that year, he had gotten promotion at his job. He became a manager at his job. He had found a really nice other young man to date. They were in a really like healthy and loving relationship, and he became like, you wouldn't have recognized him from, you know, September to July. So I see the power of this kind of work. It's really profound.
That brings me, you know, thinking about the poem about the willow trees that you wrote for the kids. I assume you've shared that with them, and I'm curious what their reaction has been to that work.
We actually created a whole show for the Fringe Festival around that poem, around several other pieces that I had written that were like, sort of like inspiring and motivational for the kids. They're not kids, the young adults, and they really appreciate it, you know. And I gave them all copies of it, and they were like, "I have a copy of it, you know, so that I can, you know, when I'm not feeling so great, I can remember." Yeah, so they.
Nice. Yeah. Other questions, comments?
First of all, wonderful, thank you. I was wondering, when you were talking about that other person's transformation, I was just thinking you started reflecting back when you were 14, not wanting to share your poetry.
Yep.
And now you're finishing a dissertation and sharing it. So I guess I was just wondering, in your own experience, how have you seen the thematic changes in your life through how you're able to express yourself in poetry?
That's a great question. There's a huge shift. I know, like, a lot of my early poems I've included in my dissertation piece because they tell a story, a very specific story, right? And so I have this whole, like, record of so much, you know, so much pain and angst, and, like, it was really my trauma speaking, and I think it was me giving myself a voice before I felt I deserved one. And as I have gotten older and continued to write, and you know, my work with the group, with At First No More, has also reinforced my ability to have a voice and to use that voice, because it's not just about me anymore, right? So I have really made a tremendous shift, and I've had the opportunity to take several classes with Carol and, like, learn about, you know, just to do more fine-tuning of the innate ability that I have always had, and learn, like, what my sort of habits were, and, like, when to take words out, you know, so that's been really helpful to be able to look at my process and actually know that I have a process and pay attention to that, so that my writing gets better and stronger, and that I can, like, do these kinds of things and give this to other people.
Wonderful. Other final comments or questions? You did a magnificent job transforming an unexpected duo into a solo event. And the collaborative poem, I was amazed at how unified the voice felt once I started listening closely to the work. I mean, the two of you really work back and forth in such a way that there's a very strong singular voice. That was my sense coming through that poem.
Yeah, I was really happy about that one. So I was like, well, how am I gonna, you know, how does this work together? And actually, that was like hearing it out loud. Yes.
Yes, you
I
did.
just want to expound on what you said, Dr. Barrett, about the group piece and how it sounds like, you know, a singular voice as it goes back and forth. Because one of the things that we work on pH balance is breath and breathing. So it's in that poem, it's like you guys was breathing succinctly as you guys are creating that poem. And to me, it shows how expression allow people to get on their one accord. Like if you breathe on the same rhythm as you're writing, it does become one voice, right? My pain, your pain, your pain, my pain, and we're able to share it. And so whether you're around or the other authors around as you guys express it, I think it's like one cohesive, like breath. It's good. It came out.
Good point. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here and for pulling this out of the hat despite the move, the relocation, the technical troubles, and Carrie's unfortunate absence. You did a great job. To get out of Diana's room. Do you know how to navigate? Appreciate it. Good work. We did it. She did it. And we got through all that. We never heard from Carrie.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. What's your name? Katie. Katie?
I was going to go to that one, but I think I'm going to do what you said.
Time over there.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
I'll be on some feature.
Thank you, Linda.
But not, I'll be on the 22nd to the 26th. Well, I Hey,
Thank you so much, Carol. Where am I going?
I don't know, I like Robert, I like his
We have time.
This restaurant called Zola's. Yeah, they invited me out. They invited me back on the feature last night. I'm featured in July, so I invite y'all. Yeah, they got it. I said, long as my corner. But yeah, I'm actually downtown. It's like, no, it's a black-owned clothing store. It's called Black-owned. It's a black coffee shop. So I'm going next to you. They have very
And she came up and she gave him like a high hug, and he had a he was like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know. And she was like, okay. And then I so he takes his tissue out of his hand, she's like, let's take up his eye cam like every day.
I have to.
Stay here home now. What I just do. So with the overall,
Oh, yeah, she said she's gonna say that.
Melissa.
Olivia said she's gonna say it.
Melissa,
Double check.
are you going to set up something?
yeah, I need your guys' phone number. It's only 10 of 9.
Okay.
We have lots of,
Yeah, we have lots.
we have till 9:30 till the next panel.
Trying to set up a
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Do you do that? I said, you can download it.
Yes. Yeah.
I want you to call them.
We ended a little early because my co-presenter did not make it.
She was so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that.
Good morning.
At least 3 years.
Great. Yeah, I mean, like Carrie was supposed to co-present. I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I didn't realize we were first thing in the morning versus like what the deal is. So I just, I did it myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you'll have.
Well, I'm really happy to have them because we're zooming in somebody too.
I got you.
It's 609. 1056.
And we can come here and raise him a different way, right? Because we have to work.
Melissa,
We can take bunches for him.
Yeah, that's good.
It's funny, I was talking about Charles.
Sure.
last
You
night,
know, it's just a weird fact.
Mama Harry.
I immediately
Go to Charleston. Here's.
She's not expecting here for this one. Till 9:30. So that's.
Yeah.
It's her, that's never
Is your last name G-A-I-T?
Do you know
She was a while before you.
I do, but I feel like I might have been her like the first.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like 17.
Keep getting my messages.
Oh.